Economics is about people and how they decide what they do. The rational expectations answering, if they're making a forecast, they're probably doing it well. We're trying to describe a whole economy of 300 million people in 6 or 8 equations. That's abstraction.
Today I would like to present about the Nobel Prize in Economic Science in 1995 by Robert Emerson Lucas Jr. with the prize motivation in having developed and applied the hypothesis of rational expectation. With me, Selo Puradmani, I'm the MBA student of IPMI Business International School. Let's start the presentation.
I'm visiting in the faculty at New York University, and I'm staying for 4 weeks. It's good to go get out and see the world, and it's good to have a change. Big deal for me was Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels in 1848. I was just hugely excited by that, that's what you could do with history. And it was all kind of economics in a way. I mean, that's what Marx is. So there's a lot of great stuff going on in economic history. We're not Marxists anymore. But to me, the centerpiece of history is kind of the lives of ordinary people, how they work, what they do, what they know. I think, I kind of got that starting with Marx, and that same idea seems to me to be, it's what I like to do. Everything I do is driven by something like that.
What is remarkable for Bob is that he started many kind of even fields in many different parts. A lot of them goes under the name of Lucas, in finance, in development, in macro, in monetary economics, both in terms of fundamentally changing the way we go about study macroeconomics and also on the inside, the substantive insights. It really was a, before and after.
I mean, economics is a lot of fun, and it's just fun when you get into new territory when you can't solve the problem. And you're working, you're thinking, you try, you get it wrong, and then when it comes together, it's great. Rational expectations is a technical term for technical people. But the common sense of it is that when people are deciding on whether to buy a house or buy a car or put their child through college, they're thinking ahead. They have to have some vision of what's going to pay off. Is the house going to be a value go up or down? Is the child who goes to college going to get a job or not? These are the questions people care about. We want to take that into account. So oftentimes we talk about people as though everybody's acting in exactly the same way for exactly the same reasons. Now, there's no such thing, obviously. There's no point in setting out complicated theories that when you can't work out their consequences. I mean, that's nothing. Complication is the enemy.
Bob was doing the simplest thing you could possibly do that wasn't ridiculous. It really marks a watershed in how everybody must do economics. And so I think that is an extremely impressive statement of what a method for modeling macroeconomic variables must be.
The mathematical models they're just fictions. They're just things we make up. They're writing down on a piece of paper. But I think that's true of Newton's laws too. I mean, I haven't hit that. I haven't hit the Newton level. I know, but it's all something that's left out. When Newton looked about the Earth going around the sun, he neglected all the other planets because he couldn't handle having 10 planets going around. So he figured he'd get it pretty close, which of course he did. That's how you do. You start with something simple and develop it as far as you can.
He's a very unusual person, just visionary. He sort of sees things. People would always say, how do you know your model's true? But then, of course, he always had the answer there. He said, all models are abstractions, and therefore all models are false. Yet that doesn't mean they're not useful. You never argue with Lucas. You agree fast where you disagree.
Once I got into rational expectations, I could see that a lot of the models that people were building, and I had been, too, were just had to be wrong. They couldn't be right. Maybe I didn't know what the right answer was, but I sure as hell knew these were the wrong answers. And that had an effect. Again, it's a question of the models not respecting what is people are actually thinking in a way that's accurate enough.
He writes beautifully. So Bob writes, as I was saying, for instance, even when I have private emails that we are arguing about a technical issue, it's just well constructed. It's just beautiful. Sometimes I have to watch it because I get convinced just because how beautiful it's written. But I think this is not secret. I'm sorry to say.
There are three models that Lucas critiqued. The first is traditional model, the classical and new Keynesian model. In the classical theory, effects of unanticipated and anticipated policy. In the short run for unanticipated policy, the economy has moved up to short-run belief curves to a higher inflation rate and lower unemployment. As in the long run, workers correctly anticipated the higher price level and increased their wage demand accordingly. In the anticipated policy, there is no short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment, and also the short-run belief curves and the long-run belief curves are the same. The curve is vertical, as you can show in the figure 1, in the panel A for unanticipated and the point B, panel B for anticipated. The response to the anticipated or unanticipated increase in aggregate demand. So the implication for policymakers, there are distinctions between effects of anticipated and unanticipated policy action. The policymakers must know the expectation to know outcome of the policy. And the last one, design policy rules so price will remain stable. For the new Keynesians and rational expectation, the objection to complete wage and price is flexible. The model assumes rational expectation, but wage and prices are sticky. In this figure 2, this is talking about a short-run response to the expansionary policy in the new Keynesians model. As the money increases, the aggregate demand also will be shifted out to the aggregate demands too. In this panel A, this is talking about the response to the unanticipated expansion policy. Aggregate supplies will still stay as aggregate supply 1, but the aggregate demand will be shifted to the aggregate demands too. It means that output or Y will be moved to the YU. The output will be increased and the price level also increase. But what about the anticipated policy? In this panel 2, this is a response to the unanticipated expansion policy. Aggregate demand will be shifted to the aggregate demands too, but aggregate supply also will be shifted to the aggregate supply A. Y will be increased by less than in the panel A. Price will be increased by more than the panel A. So the point will be here. Anti-inflation policy in the three models also have a movement. In a traditional model, aggregate supply will be shifted to the aggregate supply 2, whether policy anticipated or not. In a new classical model, an anticipated condition, aggregate supply shift to the aggregate supply 2. It means that output decrease and also the inflation. In anticipated condition, aggregate supply stays at aggregate supply 1. Stays in the point 1. It means that the output unchanged and the inflation will be decreased to the 0. But for the new conditions model, in anticipated, aggregate supply shift to the aggregate supply 2. It means output decrease and also the inflation. For the anticipated, aggregate supply will be shifted to the aggregate supply second action. It means that output decreased by less and the inflation decreased by more. The stabilization policy in the three models. In traditional, it is possible for an activist policy to stabilize output fluctuation. In a new classical, activist stabilization policy aggregates output fluctuations. For the new Keynesians, anticipated policy does matter to output fluctuation, more uncertainty about the outcome than traditional. So what is the impact of rational expectation revolution? The impact are more aware of importance of expectation and credibility. The expectation formation will change when the behavior of forecast variable change. Lucas' critique has caused most economists to doubt use of conventional econometric models for policy evaluation. Since effect of policy depends on expectation, economists less activist. Effect of a policy depends critically on the public's expectation about that policy. Policy effectiveness proportion not widely accepted. Less fine-tuning and more stability. As the conclusion of Lucas' critique, insofar as macroeconomics and macroeconometrics use variables to demonstrate how the economic responds to unit targets, it is required to have more justification for this than reference to past-driven parameters. This is due to the different view on how private agents respond to a change in economic policy. They are not guided by past event and experience. A micro-foundation as proposed by Lucas would abandon the aggregate structure, therefore leaving the strong but not convincing assumption of a traditional model behind it. Since private agent anticipated monetary disturbance, any monetary policy is ineffective. Any real effects in the economic occur only through price level surprises, or in other words, differences between unanticipated and non-anticipated monetary shocks. This is all about the presentation today. Thank you for watching.